that they would have an overview of what those options are, including what they are, what the pros and cons are that have been identified, and some preliminary costs. Because without costs, we can't assess anything, right? It would be really nice to say, that looks great, until you know how much it costs. So that all has to be part of what goes out to the community. We'd like to be able to get that out to the community in advance of those workshops so that people can come in, we can identify at that point what key questions we want to pull from the community. Are these solutions, any of these solutions, things that they think make sense? What are their thoughts? What's their responsiveness? We have time to develop what those question topics are. But the goal would be to be able to walk out of those forums. Right now we're looking at potentially having two, one at the middle school and one at the high school, so that people can run through a series of these discussions and ask questions and provide us with feedback. We may find at that time that we have 4 options on the table and there's really 2 that people think we should be spending time on. We may find out there's none of them are what people are thinking are viable. Hopefully we get some feedback that's constructive. And at that point, that would be your first benchmark as a board. That you'd be able to say, okay, what did we learn at these workshops? Are there needs here that people have identified and think are valid? Do any of these solutions look like things we should further explore? Now, do we need to go back to the drawing board and slow down this process? So that would be your first check point, would be February and March of 2012. So then as you work through it, so let's assume at that point you've got some maybe you narrow down to 2 options that the community has given you feedback on. And we're going to continue to focus on refining them and making adjustments or whatever it may be that we find out from the community. So then the suggestion would be by the late spring, so now we're talking about April, after Easter, example, that we'd want to potentially go back out to the community, again, the entire community, with another survey similar to what you did last fall, where you had over 3,000 people participate in helping you identify priorities. So at this point, you would actually have an option or 2 or 3, whatever you're down to share with the community and get more specific feedback. And the goal would be at that point, getting that feedback back in May, again reevaluating, what do people think? Are we on track? Should we be focusing on one of these options? Should we slow down? Is this not the right time? What is the community going to tell us? That benchmark would be in June. So the goal would be by June, really by the end of this coming school year, we'd have a better sense of, is November for a potential referendum even staying in play? Number 1. Number 2, if so, what is it that we should be focusing on? And that gives you the opportunity to say we are moving forward or we're not at that June time frame. Now, if you decide at that point, for whatever reason that you need more time, then we would immediately take November off the focus point, and we would just keep moving through a community process where we obviously have to do more homework, and we have to go back out to the community in the fall for more discussion and dialogue about whatever they've responded to. If you feel in June that you think you have enough input and you think you have a solution to some validated needs, then at that point you decide you're going to move forward with a referendum. You would spend the summer refining that, making sure you understand all the implications from a cost perspective, from a financing perspective, everything that you need to do to answer any questions. And we would work towards trying to make sure that you have a strong public information effort starting right back at the beginning of the school year. There have been some recent changes in the law about how much time school districts need to get a referendum question on the ballot. It used to be 42 days was the requirement, and it's now 73 days. The good news is I've strongly been an advocate for a long time that you need to be making these kinds of recommendations and decisions as a board in August anyways. So I don't think you're losing any time, honestly. Even if you were still thinking about November, I would be suggesting at your August board meeting you'd be looking at that time frame to actually adopt resolution, get on the ballot, so you can clearly communicate what's going on. So that's the time frame you would be on if you were going to go to referendum. If not, like I said, you just keep adjusting and revising according to the plan. And my goal is to help you continue through this process in an open, transparent way that really helps people understand what their needs are and what solutions you're coming up with. Any questions on that before I talk more specifically about the first mailing?
The public meetings, you have 6 on here?
2.
2?
2 set up like community forum style, working in tables. It'd be kind of a presentation and overview, and then we have people working collaboratively at tables on topics and mixing it up so they're hearing what other people are thinking and sharing.
So I get it's
feedback.
2 opportunities and then you have 2 mailings?
Well, the mailings would go out prior to that.
Okay.
There's some, what we'd actually like to suggest is that, and I have a mock-up of the first one. That's enough. I might need to share this one. This is an example of postcard mailing that we're suggesting that we start trying to develop, to go out on a monthly basis, updating the community about what is going on in this process, where it's appropriate. So this is actually a mock-up of the very first one that we'd like to issue soon with your feedback, coming out in December, kind of letting people know what this process is. Prior to the forums, we would have a larger mailing that would go out, more comprehensive, that would actually outline. You can't put all that on a postcard. So it needs to be more comprehensive, probably something that looked like a 4-page newsletter kind of a thing. And it would allow people to actually understand a little bit about what we're proposing prior to coming to the meeting. It helps people, and I think it'll attract more people if we've given them some information. And then as you go through the process, using a postcard like this is a relatively inexpensive and easy way to get the word out and continue to remind people about what's going on and make sure they know how to get information, to go to the website, things like that. So as the process moves forward, we'll be using something like this as kind of a messaging vehicle. And then once you make a decision and you actually start moving into a referendum, whether that's next fall or the following spring, then you would be in a different kind of information role. You need to figure out what is the best way to get the most information to people here in Franklin.
So we're going to have every household.
Yeah, within the school district boundaries. So one of the things that Megan is doing is working with the local postmaster to determine exactly how to get to those boundaries. It's a little bit of a challenge because you know your boundaries as a village or city are not the same as your school district. So we're trying to avoid sending too much stuff, you know, to other district. Yeah, exactly. So we're working on that. But the important part is this is not just going to families. Okay, that's the important part that I want you to understand. We're not talking about communicating only to parents of children in the school district. Every single district resident is a taxpayer, and everyone has a right to this information, and really you have a responsibility to educate them about what you're doing. So that's why we're working through this process. And the recommendation is that you need to make a little bit of an effort to make sure you know what's going on. Certainly relying on the district's website, which is very strong. Other kinds of communication channels you have through the parent networks, email. You have a lot of different ways. You're working with the local news media, you can get that word out as well. But I think you have to be prepared to do some direct mail to get to people that don't pay attention otherwise.
And we keep track of the feedback that we get.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the goal. And I think there's, you know, one of the things that as we get closer to the workshops, we'll talk about having table facilitators and recorders so that comments are being recorded, and then we'll summarize that and put that on the website and be able to talk about it. I mean, you need that data, and you need the rest of the community to see what people are saying. And you know, one of the important parts about this process is if you go down this process, you have to be prepared for what you're hearing, and you need to be prepared to be responsive to that. And hopefully that will help guide decisions that you're making in the future about timing and scope and costs, and those are all things that you need to have a better handle on. So this is an example of a postcard that we're talking about going out. It's actually they're essentially designed to be half the size of a piece of paper, so they're cut a little short right now. But it's very simple. It's really just trying to introduce the idea that we have this process underway, that more information is coming, and it also articulates the vision statement that you were introduced to, I think, at your last board meeting. That this is kind of your goal as a board to frame the work that's underway. Letting the community know what your vision is for facilities. And that's that kind of umbrella statement that's going to be really important as you continue to go through looking at options and testing it back to this vision statement. Are we accomplishing what we said our mission is when it comes to our facilities? So it's the first step in the process. What are your thoughts about it? If you have any questions about the timeline, I'd be happy to answer them and just kind of show you the process that we're moving down.